どくさいから建物ごと燃やしちゃった。そっちは始末つけたからイーストシティの様子を見に戻ったんだけど、あいつはグラトニ
ー似合うよ。血の匂いをまとったイシュバル人が近くにいる。
Scar. Okay, get ready. Oh.
もうイーストシティにはいないんじゃないですか？
いてもらわねば困る。
は？
セントラルで持て余した事件を解決できれば私の株も上がるというものだ。利用できるものは全て利用する。私が大総統の地位について軍事の全権を掌握するまでは、ね。
不穏当な発言は慎んだ方がよろしいか。スカーが着ていたものに間違いないと思います。
死体は出たか？
捜索はしてますが、
どのみちこの出血では無事ではないでしょ
う。何としても奴の死体を引っ張り出せ。
Oh, it's not there anymore.
勘弁してくださいよ。
逃げられちゃったわね。あれだけやっとけばスカーもしばらく動けないでしょ。私はまたセントラルに戻るわ。お父様にスカーのこと報告しとかなくちゃね。
Father,
図書館の件ですが、第一文館の資料に精通している人物がいるとのことです。もっとも退職しているのですが。
期待嘘だな。
何か。
ぶしつけな質問ですが、なぜよろ。
Hold on now. Hold on now.
ある綺麗な風景だな。そうだね、兄さん。なんだこの本の山。
本当に人が住んでるんですか？
Whoa.
シェスカさん、いらっしゃいませんか？シェスカさん。
Sounds like she needs rescuing.
あんたがシェスカ？はい。第一文館にいた？
第一文館なんて神の響きなんでしょう。生まれた時から本が好きで、あそこに就職が決まった時には天にも昇るような気持ちでした。
That's cute.
本当に私ってば本を読む以外は何をやってもどんくさくて、どこに行っても仕事ももらえなくて、そうよ、ダメ人間だわ。社会のクズなのよ。
ちょっと聞きたいんだけどさ。
はい、ティムマルコ。はい、覚えています。
本当？
手書きで、しかも分野が違う本棚に乱暴に突っ込んであったんでよく覚えています。
本当にあったんだ。
その研究書読みたいんですか？
そうだけど焼けちまった。
Something tells me.
邪魔しました。
私中身全部覚えてますけど。だから一度読んだ本の内容は全部覚えてます。
Nice.
時間がかかりますけど復写しましょうか。ティム・マルコー氏の研究所の復写です。すみません、かなりの量だったもので5日もかかってしまいました。
世の中すごい人がいるもんだね、兄さん。
Yeah.
本当にマルコさんの？
砂糖大さじ1に水少々加え、本当に今日の献立選手だわ。
No.
君、これのどこが重要書類なんだね。
そんなこと言われても私は覚えたまま。
There's going to be something in there.
おっと、俺っと。もしよい、これ俺の登録コードと身分証明の銀時計。俺の年間研究費からそんだけ引き出してシスカに渡してあげて。
研究費から。何ですかこの金額。こんな額ポンと出すなんて何なのあの子。
He's got no need for it.
本当にこんな料理の本が錬金術の研究所なんですか？
錬金術って悪用すると危険な技術なんだぜ。それを防ぐには錬金術研究の暗号化だ。緑の獅子、哲学者の月のことかもしれない。フラメルの古写本かラムズプリングの賢者の石について持ってきたか？
これマルコさんに直接聞いた方がいいんじゃ。
いや、聞いたら負けになる。
そういう問題なの？
お、シェスカ。
母を立派な病院に移すことができました。
Nice.
ありがとうございました。
ああ、いいっていいって。
ダメ人間じゃないよ。何かに一生懸命になれるってことはそれ自体が才能だと思うし、それにすごい記憶力がある。自信持っていいと思うよ。
Absolutely, yep.
ありがと
ただでさえ忙しいところに持ってきて第一文館も丸焼きになっちまってよ。
第一文館。
あそこの書庫には事件の記録や何やら保管してたから、業務に差し支えて大変だよ。あ、どうした？
へえ。
どうだろう。
Here's the job.
この人働き口探してるんだけど。
よっしゃ、今すぐ手続きだ。うちは給料いいぞ。
う。そんなありがとうございます。自信持って頑張ってみます。本当にありがとう。
早速仕事だ。
人揃いがあのおっさん。
Go on, go on. You'll find something. Oh, you'll crack it.
解けないからといって自暴自棄になっては。
解けたんです。解けてしまったんですよ。
Oh,
暗号。
bud,
本当ですか？
bud.
よかったじゃ
Oh,
ないで
great
すか。
shot.
いいことあるかチクショー。
悪魔の研究求めてはならないもの。恨むぜマルコさんよ。賢者の石の材料は生きた人間だ。しかも石を1個生成するのに複数の犠牲が必要
Ah,
って
the
ことだ。
sacrifice.
そんな非人道的なことが軍で行われてたなんて。
聞かなかったことにしといてくれ。
Maybe you shouldn't have told them.
俺も思い出しただけで胸くそが悪くなりますよ。
なんだ。
なんでもありません。
They'll slip up immediately.
なんかこう手の届くところに来たなと思ったら逃げられてやっとの思いで掴んだら掴んだそいつに蹴落とされてさ。神様は禁忌を犯した人間をとことん嫌うらしい。俺たち一生このままかな。
Oh, great. That's great.
俺さずっとお前に言おうと思ってたけど怖くて言えなかったことがあるんだ。
何？どうしよう。
仕方だ仕方。
Don't break it.
いたぞエドワード・エルリック。賢者の石にそのような恐るべき秘密が隠されていようとは。
ごめんなさい。
真実とは時として残酷なも
But
の
you're-
よ。
真実。
どうしたのお兄さん。
真実の奥のさらなる真実。錬金術の研究所と一緒だ。表面に見えることは真実の一部でしかない。
政府関連の錬金術研究所はセントラル市内に4カ所ある。そのうちマルコー氏が所属していたのは第3研究所だ。
Okay.
この建物は
第5研究所ですが現在は使用されていません。崩壊の危険性があるので立ち入り禁止になっています。
Ah,
ここだ。
that makes it the perfect place, right?
に刑務所がある。
それが
賢者の石の材料は何だった？
Oh.
生きた人間。
刑務所には死刑囚もいるだろう。表向きは処刑したことにして。
所轄が違う刑務所が絡んでるとなると政府が関係してるのかな。
これは高度に政治的な問題にな
Yeah,
る。
you don't say.
エロリック兄弟をおとなしくしてるのだぞ。さてお前たちこの建物に忍び込んで中を調べようかと思っておったな。
They'll do it regardless.
なんつってに。
Ooh.
使ってない建物に門番ね。
Wow. Yeah, I've missed the score, man. Do it like Solid Snake.
あら、ここで待ってろ。
Oh.
66なんだ48久しぶりの客人だ。命知らずのバカ野郎だな。
これは普通のサイズじゃ通れなかったな。 体小さくてよかった。
There you go.
自分で小さいなって言っちまった。
Oh. Ah. All right, folks, back at it. Episode 7. I thought that was a great episode to kind of ease back into, right? Didn't feel like it's throwing me into the deep end, right? In that sense, yes, even though it was an unfortunate break, it's better that the break came really early on in season 1. In the show, right? Rather than being at the midpoint or, the second act, or maybe even the third act. And of course, it'll take me an episode or two to really get the gears turning again, right? Kind of like warming up before a workout, get everything loosened up, that muscle memory kicks in. So yeah, even though I thought it was a great episode to ease back into, doesn't mean that it didn't have some fantastic exposition and, some motives on display. And, I feel like this anime, this show, the structure of this show or the story, I think it excels at kind of, building on things that have been established already, right? Building on that, building on the information that's been given to the audience, but then episode by episode, kind of building on it, right? As new things keep coming to the forefront. And I also feel like the reveals of this anime, of this story, and the build-up to those reveals is really quite fantastic. And of course, speaking of reveals, there's quite a major one in this, right? The Philosopher's Stone, and the details behind the makeup of a Philosopher's Stone and the requirements, the ingredients. I love that Marco's research is kind of disguised as recipes. I mean, that's so on brand, isn't it? It makes so much sense. But I love that idea or the notion that these alchemists disguise their findings, their research in this manner, right? So it'll be great to see how some of these other perhaps mainline characters kind of handle that, right? As the show progresses, as the storyline progresses. But yeah, going back to the Philosopher's Stone and this new revelation, it's quite the harsh, quite the dark revelation, right? The truth isn't always the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Sometimes it's quite harsh, quite disgusting, right? Quite deflating. And yeah, both Al and Ed run into this speed bump now, right? And Dr. Marco wasn't being hyperbolic, was he? Right? The devil's research. And Ed knows now, right? He knows now and he understands. And this also kind of explains how the stone, even the imperfect one, right? Because I've seen it a few times, right? On display, in play, be it through Isaac McDougall, be it through Father Carnello, right? And of course, because of its imperfect nature and perhaps a bit of inexperience through Carnello, there's that rebound, right? Yet it's not fake, right? It's just imperfect. But as of this point, both Al and Ed kind of think that it's just a fake, right? They firmly established that, he believes it's a fake because, it's meant to be this perfect material, right? How could it just break apart like that? But yeah, this kind of explains how it's able to ignore all of these laws that are established, right? Set in stone, equal exchange and all that, right? Because apparently, from the sounds of it, the price has been paid already, right? It's been paid and then some through human lives, right? Through these sacrifices, multiple sacrifices even, for just one stone, right? This whole concept of sacrifices, if you kind of go back and look at things like the Ishvalan War, there you have the loss of life, right? There you have human life on an immense scale, up for grabs essentially, or it was up for grabs, right? So you start kind of seeing the reasoning or some of the potential motives behind, initiating that type of war, right? That type of life, again, up for grabs. Yeah, so, and then you have Lust, who's mentioned already, oh, that's too bad. He was a sacrifice, right? And then she made it really clear a couple of episodes ago that Ed is really quite important, right? She straight up called him a sacrifice. And she also mentioned the Flame Alchemist, right? So those two names came up. And this is around the time, her and Envy are having a conversation. And then if you kind of keep to that conversation, Gluttony, right? Gluttony was excited about the prospect of a lot of loss of life in the near future, perhaps, right? Because of the things they're setting into motion. And he was really quite excited, or it was really quite excited about all the life that's on offer really soon. I believe it mentioned something like, oh, there's a lot of people are going to die. There's going to be a lot of death. And I believe Lust said, yes, there is. So, you could see that these sacrifices essentially on a large scale, there's something really crazy going on in the background here, right? Behind the scenes here. Whoever this father figure is, right? And again, I feel like I've seen a glimpse of him in the first episode. And, note how Lust mentioned that she has to go back to Central to report to Father, right? To let him know about Scar, who is kind of, whose location or his, status is kind of unknown at this point. But, I don't believe for a second that he died. No. There's, no. It just doesn't make sense at all for him to die. Not that, they're implying that he died anyways. The audience knows that he's not dead, right? There's no body. But even beyond that, his story just kind of began. Though, according to Lust, he's going to be out of commission for some time because of the injuries that he suffered. Now, on those injuries, both Lust and Gluttony, up top, trying to blend in, both of them look like they're good as new. Yet they both had a run-in with Scar, who's really quite impressive, right? Not only that, there's this explosion that happened, and they were in the middle of it, right? But here you have them, no scratch, nothing, as if they've kind of healed. And, I see Scar cut one of his arms off, Gluttony's arm off, and you see it's kind of like this hollow shell almost, right? So yeah, these sins continue to be quite intriguing. But before I move on, the war, the Ishvalan War, I am quite intrigued by it, right? I am interested or excited. Excited is not maybe it's not the right term given, the things that play out, but excited in the sense that I want to learn more about it. Because if you go back to some of that exposition through Roy Mustang, right, giving us a bit of that background and how it kind of, all kicked off, a child being shot accidentally, right? I don't know, that to me, that feels highly suspect, right? Almost as if things are being put into motion by design, that it was the purpose all along to kick it off, right? But yeah, like I mentioned, that's a lot of human life on a large scale up for grabs, right? A lot of sacrifices up for grabs. So yeah. And, again, should be noted, the Fuhrer, King Bradley, is the one who gives the order. So yeah, certainly a person of interest. He has been since episode 1, right? For sure. And, speaking of the Fuhrer, King Bradley, and I spoke of motives being presented, Roy Mustang, right? They make it really quite clear that, he's trying to kind of climb that political ladder and he wants to take up that position, right? Because his ideas are a bit different, right? He doesn't completely agree with how things are run, right? So yeah. That is going to be interesting as well. And of course, Havoc and Riza, of course. But, Havoc is also kind of one of his close allies in all of this, right? Clearly backing Roy to ascend to that position, right? So yeah, that's something really quite interesting that came out of this episode as well. And how I mentioned that it's a bit of a speed bump. I mean, it's more than just a speed bump, right? This harsh realization about, the makeup of the Philosopher's Stone, right? Yeah, man, something that immense, immense power like that cannot come without immense sacrifice, right? An immense cost, right? So yeah, and also it kind of goes back to that whole idea or notion of redemption, right? Atoning for your sins, correcting a mistake. Sometimes some mistakes cannot be redeemed. Some mistakes are there to stay. Sometimes there's no correction, right? Or there's no correcting it. Sometimes it is what it is, and you have to live with it. Dr. Marco mentioned the late Dr. Marco from the looks of it, right? Lust goes to his home. He mentioned how he could spend the rest of his life saving hundreds of lives, but it would still not even come close to atoning for his role in all of that loss of life, right? No, it's not something that can kind of equal out, right? It's not something that can cancel out or something you could correct, right? Some things stay forever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see throughout the series and throughout their journey, the Elric brothers, that is, how they come to terms with these ideas, right? That maybe some things cannot be fixed. Then also, let me go back to lust and, this whole concept of these sacrifices, right? She's mentioning some really interesting individuals, right? Not just regular humans, people like Ed, right? And she's also hinting at the Flame Alchemist as well, right? But for Ed, it was like straight out, he is a sacrifice, a potential sacrifice during that conversation. So, those sacrifices, that's an interesting thought as well, right? And, if you go back to episode 1, near the conclusion, that beautiful scene drenched in red as Lust is on the phone, right? She mentioned that, oh, that's too bad. Isaac McDougall was a pillar, was a potential pillar. And, later I found out that indeed that meant a sacrifice. So, these special or unique individuals or these potential sacrifices, according to Lust, yeah, that right there, that's really quite intriguing, right? This whole aspect that's kind of in the background, Lust and this father that she mentioned again, and the sins. That is really one of the most interesting aspects of this storyline. I mean, there's a lot of different motives on display or at play, a lot of different factions. So yeah, I'm all here for that. I'm excited to get really deep into this, by the time I get into like episodes 30, 35, episodes 40. Ooh, yeah. It's going to be incredible to kind of look back at some of these early episodes. And it already feels like it's so detailed. And that so much has been exposited in these first 7 episodes, right? I mean, you go back to the first few episodes even, there's so much that's been given to us, right? A lot of foreshadowing, a lot of build-up, a lot of things that are going to be recontextualized a bit later on, surely. There's a few more characters added to the supporting cast. Sheska, Ross, and Brosh, or Brosh. I like the inclusion of Ross and Brosh. It really gives you this outsider's perspective, an outside perspective into the Elric brothers. And I think that's certainly a fun and unique perspective to have, right? Because us, the audience, kind of knows these brothers now, right? 7 episodes in, and I feel like I really know them. But it's great to see this outside perspective and for them to kind of learn, right, by spending some time with these brothers of how impressive they really are, right? Because they are, they're an impressive pair. And I love how, they continue to kind of inspire and help out. You have Sheska here, who I really quite liked. I'm not sure if she's going to play any more part in the rest of the story. Surely I'll see her every now and then, hopefully, because I liked her. And, the presentation of her being, this individual who's always loved books and reading and this pursuit of knowledge and education, her love for it, it was kind of depicted in the same manner as Wenry's love for engineering or, automail or the construction of automail. yeah, so I love that. I feel like a lot of us can relate to that love of books, right, and reading. But yeah, she comes in clutch. This whole idea of burning down the HQ, essentially, not HQ, the library that had Marco's research, or that housed Marco's research, and some of these other things as well, right? As Maze Hughes mentioned, she comes in clutch, as she knows everything inside and out, right? She knows all the details. So it was all, the burning down of that building was almost like a non-issue. So perhaps you could even argue there's a bit of plot convenience there, right? That she showed up, this individual happened to be around or exist, right? But yeah, that issue was solved almost instantly, right? But yeah, I liked her. And I loved her living quarters. This cozy and confined space full of books. I mean, a bit dangerous. Her love for books almost gets her killed. But, if you've seen some of my other stuff on the channel, I love confined spaces and living quarters, right? Unique takes on that. And, this was certainly quite a unique take on it. This cozy, I felt like it was kind of cozy, and I love how Ed is able to put those resources to really good use, right? Really helpful. And it goes back to that notion of all of those old timers, essentially, right? Looking at these two brothers and kind of noticing that, okay, it's great to see that the immense resources of the military are being put to good use, right? For once, perhaps. So I love to see that. That Ed, who doesn't seem to have much use for a lot of that, right? The grant money, that is, because that's just not the type of person he is. That's not his goal. Certainly not his immediate goal in life, right? For him, it's more so as long as he can kind of pursue the things he loves, right, and the things that are important, he's good, right? He's good. So yeah, I love that he's able to help out people that are in need, right? And yeah, I love that. It's wholesome. It really is. And I hope it continues, right? Now I feel like it is going to continue, that they are going to have run-ins with a lot of good people that are in difficult situations, right? And the Elric brothers, they do make they are able to make a change, right? You see Alphonse here, wow, continues to be this mature individual at his young age. And, before I kind of move on to the final part of this discussion, perhaps, that moment, it's a beautiful scene as well. Both of them are quite dejected, quite, quite upset about the revelation, right? This object of desire, something they've been in pursuit of for some time now. Whew. Yeah, it's not as easy as they thought, right? Obtaining it or being able to use its immense power, right? Or abilities. You see that Ed has a lot on his mind, and he has something that he would love to ask Al. Not love to. You see that he's really quite he's kind of tippy-toeing around it. It's something that's been in his mind clearly, but of course, Armstrong comes in at just the wrong moment. So this question he's been meaning to ask Alphonse, yeah, that should be quite interesting. Is it something to do with that day, right? That day, again, the episode title of episode 2, and the things that kind of transpired, right? And things they both experienced or didn't experience from the looks of it. Let's see. Let's put a pin in that. That should be quite interesting. I'm sure, soon enough, it'll probably be a few episodes before I kind of actually get to see him posing that question. But, yeah, I'm quite excited about that. But yeah, I mentioned it being a beautiful scene. Again, it continues to have some fantastic art direction, doesn't it? The visuals of this anime, the photography, the look of it, the backgrounds, I'm really, really digging it. I am. And, lastly, the cliffhanger, right? They break into the 5th lab. It's starting to get into that aspect of it now, right? Political espionage or political conspiracy, as Armstrong mentioned, right? So yeah, cliffhanger there, 48 and 66, these test subjects from the looks of it, right? Because, it became kind of clear that the lab number 5 is right beside a prison, and, people on death row essentially are clearly being, used for experiments. And also, lastly, I should mention that I did a rewatch before, kind of getting back into it. And I actually even checked out all of the dub episodes, right? All 6 dub episodes. Yes, I thought it was a good experience. It was, before I go any further, I certainly prefer the sub, right? Having experienced both back to back, I watched episode 1 in sub, then I watched episode 1 in dub, and then, from that point on, episode 2, episode 3, all of them, right? Sub and dub. So my preference is still the sub. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed the dub as well. But yeah, it was great to experience some of those really familiar voices, be it the voice for Armstrong, Christopher Sabat, of course. And I thought the voiceover for Scar was a standout as well, for me at least, the dub. In terms of Al and Ed, for Alphonse, 100% the sub. I certainly prefer the sub. There's no competition for me. Again, remember folks, this is my opinion. This is my preference. So yeah, no competition there. I certainly prefer Alphonse in the sub. And then Ed, yeah, I thought Ed had a solid dub. I didn't mind it. I thought it was great. But yeah, for many of the others, I do prefer the sub. But also, I've got to say, Nina did not sound like a young girl, like a young child in the dub. Not to me, at least. There was something a bit off about that English dub, or the voiceover for that child specifically. I don't know. You could tell it's an older person, right? You could really tell it's an older person trying to do a child's voice. But of course, the same happens for Japanese, doesn't it? But, the thing there, the Japanese voice actors, they're able to really sell that it is a voice of a young child. So it's kind of like night and day, honestly. Nina in the dub and Nina in the sub. And I felt like Nina in the sub was so much cuter as well, right? As she's meant to be, right? She was depicted as this really cute child that something really unforgivable happens to, right? Nina in the dub, I don't know. I found it kind of strange. I'm just being honest. I found that dub to be kind of off for a child. But yeah, that's about it for this one, folks. Glad to be back, really excited to be back, and really excited to really dig into it. So if you enjoyed this, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full length or perhaps even early access, consider checking out the Patreon page. The links are in the description, in the pinned comment. Also social media, Instagram and Twitter both. If you're into that. Right then, thank you for joining me, and thank you for your time, as time is precious, and I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.